This is the story about how two of my players attacked a group of bandits, found out they were slavers, and ended up on the plane of limbo. Hey everybody, it's Nick, and this is the story of two of my players, Hunter and Charlie, and what their side quest was as they went off and did sort of a solo adventure while the rest of the group is sort of having downtime doing their own adventures. These two players wanted to team up to go do something interesting. For any of my players, including Hunter and Charlie, this is super spoilers. Do not watch this video because there's going to be all kinds of things in here about what happened for these two characters and why I did some of the things that I did. So definitely don't watch this video if you're one of my players. So I'm going to recount the story of what happened to Varas and Willhelm as they were taking on these bandits, and more so I'm going to delve into why I did some of the things that I did, what the choices I made were, and why I did that. So these two players had recently, in the game where everybody else was playing, had been wronged by some bandits, and they said, you know, everybody else is going to go off and do this thing, go do that thing. Hey, do you want to team up with me and we're going to go take on these bandits? And both players said, that sounds like a great idea, let's go with each other. And so they foraged for a while for some poisons and potions that Varas could use. He's gotten very into alchemy, and so I've made charts and tables and things like that for him to utilize. And so they've got some poisons, some potions, some interesting ideas for how we're going to take on these bandits. And then they go back to the spot where they were previously attacked, ambushed, and one of the players, Willhelm, uses clairvoyance in a really interesting way. You can just create a sensor anywhere you can describe or see or a place you're familiar with. And so he says, what if I just made a sensor like 1,000 feet in the air and just looked down to see if I could see these bandits anywhere? I was like, that's really smart. I had never thought of that before, just using it in a high place like that. Usually it's used to be put in a corner of a room where you can spy on someone, but using it for a bird's eye view to see if you can spot something, that seems like a really cool use. Sure. So they spot a bunch of these bandits, and there's the same number as usual, plus a bunch of people on foot going with the bandits into the forest. And so the players are like, what's that about? But the players rolled very low this whole time. There's a running theme through the entire session that I had with these two players. And it was a full-on session. It was 4 or 5 hours just playing D&D with these two players. Man, it was a lot going on, and they rolled really badly. So I felt bad for them as they were doing that, but they did overcome their obstacles. So they have to catch up with the bandits, but they lose their trail, and so they just head in the direction that the bandits were going. And they realize we're pretty limited in our searching capability because there's only 2 of us. That is something that you notice very quickly in a 1 or 2 player session, that they do not have the same skills and capabilities that a normal full party has. You usually have a wide distribution of being able to have survival and perception and searching and spotting and spells and things like that, but when you have only 2 players or 1 player, you are much more limited in your options. So it took them quite a while to find the bandit base hidden at the bottom of a ravine in a secret cave, but they managed to do so. And then after that, they sort of tried to lure the bandits out 1 or 2 at a time and ambush them and do that over and over again, but they didn't really set that up incredibly well. They did it once and then left those bodies where they were, and so someone pops their head out the second time and goes, there's dead bodies here, and retreats back inside and gathers up all their allies, and they prepare for an oncoming battle. Well, in ambushing one of those original bandits, Varas rolls a natural 20, and when Varas rolls a natural 20 with the weapon he is using, Harvest, it's an evil sickle, he conjures an undead, and the undead helps him for a minute or whatever, and he rolls in the chart and he gets a ghost or a banshee. I think he got a banshee. And he commands his banshee to go into the cave and find the most people and let out this howling wail, where if these people fail their saving throw, they drop to 0 hit points and basically die. Very cool situation that happens there as he sends this minion in ahead of him, and it does pretty much all the work for them. They would have been able to win that battle pretty easily, but that made it much more easy. So they scout around the inside of the cavern, they find most of the bandits, and they're looking around. This seems to be where the bandits live. They see another area. This seems to be a bunch of people kept in a cage. Oh no, what's going on here? One of the things that I wanted to do was to make these more than just bandits, you know? It would have been a really simple short encounter if the players go and they're normal, low hit point, low level bandits, and they go in, they kill them all, they get some treasure and walk away. That seems pretty boring, so I wanted to make it something cool and interesting so they would have a great story to tell all of the other players when they got back. So I said, ooh, it might be interesting if these bandits were slavers as well. But what if they didn't like being slavers? What if they were working for someone else? There was a cool, crazy monster in here. And I was just looking around and thinking at different kinds of monsters. I was like, oh, what if it was related to Willhelm? He's dealing with a lot of aberrations and all kinds of things like that. What if it was some sort of an aberration? What are a cool aberration that might be into slaving? Maybe would be able to have some sort of a power over these bandits. Why would this not Aboleth are aberrations, but why would this aberration want these slaves? So I was looking through the monsters and I came across Slod, and I was like, Slod are weird, Slod are cool, I like that. I haven't really used Slod before. What if they are working for a Slod and they have to send these slaves through the dimensions to a limbo where the Slod have their empire set up? That seems kind of cool and weird, and now we're getting somewhere that is much more interesting than just we went to some bandits, we killed them, we got some money, the end. Now we're getting to really interesting territory. So we have bandits who are now slavers, and they're working with and for, possibly reluctantly, a bunch of Slod. That's really cool. So after the players kill all the bandits, they see the leader who they were after, Hogarth, coming out of his, back chambers. He's like, what in the heck is going on in here? As that happens, a bunch of tadpoles burst out of these dead bandits. I said, what if they were sort of impregnated or implanted with tadpoles? That seems weird and cool. And then ripping off Stranger Things 3, I said, what if those tadpoles formed into a cool big monster? So they have to fight a bunch of little bandits, and then for some reason they formed into a singular, bigger, more powerful thing. That's a really cool idea also. So then they fought this big, giant, creepy Slod, which basically I just used the stats for a regular old red Slod, but I described it as some a conglomeration body of a bunch of tadpoles all coming together. It was really freaky and cool, and I think my players liked it. So what follows is a big three-way cross battle between Willhelm and Varas, the red Slod giant tadpole amalgamation, and Hogarth, who's trying to figure out what in the heck is going on here. And in the process, both of the enemies are felled. Varas and Willhelm are here. They're stable. They're pretty low health, but they do heal up a little bit over a short rest. They let the slaves go, and the slaves are obviously very grateful. And so the slaves don't have much information to share with them, though. I don't know why we're here. Sometimes slaves get taken and they don't come back. But here's the weird thing. They don't leave the cave. They take them deeper into the cavern, and they never come out. And the players go, okay, so clearly there's got to be some sort of a connected cave system, right? Where they look around, there's no connected cave system. What if we loot everything, get all the gold? That's really important. But we also look for anything weird. Maybe there's a portal that lets us get out of here somehow. And indeed, there is. They head back into Hogarth's sort of private chambers, and they find a bunch of normal bandit lair things, but also a pool of water, like a rock pool, in the back, and in the bottom it seems to be glinting golden. And one of the players is like, that seems really interesting. I'm going to reach a mage hand in there, see if I can feel anything. I was like, you don't feel anything in particular. You're scrubbing around with your mage hand. You don't find anything. He's like, okay, I'm going to reach my hand in there and see what happens. And then I turn to the other player and say, awesome, Willhelm disappears. Varas, what do? It seems like Willhelm gets sucked into this pool as soon as he touches it. And the player Hunter, who is sucked into the portal, wants to press me and say, well, wait, what happens to me? What do I see? What am I? It's like, no. I'll get to you in a minute. I want to see what Varas does. Because if you give players at the table the information of what is going on through this portal, they may make a different decision than they would otherwise. What's going to happen to Willhelm on the other end of the portal is already going to happen. But what Varas does about it, that matters. And so Varas is weighing his options for a few seconds. And he's like, you know what? If there's something terrible on the other side of that, then I want to be there to back my buddy up. And if there's something good on the other side of that, because there is gold in the bottom of that, then I want to be there to share in the spoils. And so either way, I got to help my buddy out. I'm going in as well. He touches the portal, and he goes through, and they look around, and I describe the plane of limbo. And if you're not familiar, Limbo is crazy. Limbo is all these different floating land masses and weird random elemental chaotic energies like water and fire just moving around, random and chaotic. It's pretty crazy. I have never described players being there because none of my players have ever gone to Limbo before. So this was a very new experience. I described to them the ability to have sort of subjective relative gravity where you can just sort of choose which way is gravity for you. That was a really interesting thing. And they are met on the other side by a large blue Slod who sort of seems dull-witted. It seems like his job is to guard this portal. He's sort of confused and is wondering where Hogarth is. Are you the slaves? Where are the slaves? And the players very quickly piece together by looking around and having a conversation with this Slod what is going on. They find out that Hogarth has signed up to send slaves that they captured through this portal so the Slod can build this golden palace for their emperor, basically, Sindam, and he's sort of the oldest and most powerful of all the Slod. It's a really interesting back and forth conversation. They see tons of different slaves and all these different powerful Slod, and I make it very clear to them what is going on and how powerful these Slod are as the players look around and try to figure it all out. I also remark that the palace made of gold is made from the bodies of slaves. There's trace elements of gold in every person. If you melt a person down, you can get at those teeny tiny little flecks of gold. And they look at this massive Taj Mahal kind of palace made completely of gold and they go, oh my goodness, that's millions of slaves over millennia. And yes, it's a really freaky cool thing. I don't think that's any of the lore for Slod or Sindam, but I made it up and I use it and it sounded really neat. So that's how DMing works. So anyways, the players very narrowly escape. They try to reach back into the portal to transport themselves that way, but nothing happens. It's just a regular pond of water here, and so they have to fly away at the last second, avoiding danger, and they're floating through Limbo, trying to control things as best they can. And they spot, eventually, a monastery, and they know from this conversation with the Slod that there are Githzerai monasteries, and indeed Willhelm is a Githzerai. And so he's like, wait a second, my people are here? That's so cool. And so they get there and they have lots of lore conversations with what are the Gith doing here and how did you get here and what's the difference between Githzerai and Githyanki and what's going on and how do I learn? And there's these psychic monks in this monastery. It's a really cool scene. They help heal the players up. They get the tadpole that was growing in Varas from the battle. They get that out of him and heal him up, and the players all get cool new abilities. Willhelm gets like psychic related abilities and has a cool eldritch invocation. They level up to level 9 here, so that's really cool. I also gave Varas the ability to, if he reduces an enemy to 0 hit points, he basically gets a hasted action. It's sort of an execution move. If you kill somebody, then you can get to do another thing this turn, you know, make one other attack. And I even said that extra attack could, if you met the requirements, have sneak attack, because why not? It doesn't have to be balanced for everyone if I can just make sure it's balanced for Varas. So I gave him that cool ability. Maybe I'll change it later on, but I thought that was pretty neat. So the players have something cool that they can do now. They have a great story to tell everyone, and they've got all this gold and money that they looted from the bandits that they can show. And so I thought this was a really successful adventure. So the Githzerai send them on their way to the infinite staircase. They walk on the staircase for a while, they open a door on a landing, and they find themselves in the middle of a tavern in Krell. And so they have to figure out how we're going to get back from Krell. And that is where we left things. The players had a chance to free some slaves, defeat the bandits, but also all this other crazy stuff in the plane of Limbo. And so I wanted to make it something more than just, defeat some pesky old bandits. Something really cool happened to these players. They learned a lot. They were challenged in their morality and sort of the ways they were leaning by these monks. And Varas is sort of wrestling between good and evil right now, and he was challenged in that. It was a really interesting session. Lots of things learned, lots of things done, lots of cool monsters fought. And that's a lot of my philosophy on solo side adventures that you can do with your players. Doesn't have to be no combat, but combat can be very dangerous if you have way fewer players. So something to be very mindful of, and you can do crazy cool things where they get to share with the other players that, hey, we went to the plane of limbo and met all these crazy frogmen who are building a golden palace. And everybody goes, are you high right now? But I think that'll be a really fun story when they get to share with the players what happened and how they coped with everything, what they learned. It's going to be really neat. So that was a solo side adventure. That was one of my adventures that I ran just a few days ago for some players, and it'll be interesting to see how they share that with the group, what they learn from it, and how things progress going forward once the group comes back together. Thank you all for watching, and I'll see you next time.